What's the good word, Demos? We're off the ground. We're doing it live, which will let all you people know. Yeah, we're doing our Inside Edition. What's the good word, Demos? We're off the ground. We're doing it live, which will let all you people know. Yeah, we're doing our. I hope I don't get a strike. What's the good word? My impression is that good. I know. I need to be careful. I ever sing song the Magnum PI theme, right?
I already ran across my first issue. Apparently my mic didn't unmute. But that's gonna happen. We're here. It's all the little issues we're having are gonna be purely hilarious by default.
I took it off mute.
I took you off mute, but I didn't take myself off mute. And then all the windows where I had to make sure that we're streaming started playing at the same time. So I heard about 7 different Kyle Nashes playing in my head,
That's known as heaven in the eyes of some people.
It's known as terrifying in the ears of this guy right here.
You can't handle the truth.
Well, tonight we have a couple of different segments. We're going to have a special Who It Could Have Been, and we're also going to be taking a look at movie franchises. We're going to have about 20 different franchises we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about which entries are our favorites, which ones are the best, and which ones are the worst. I know Kyle and I are going to go head-to-head on quite a few of these. But before we jump into it, Kyle, right before we started recording, you were talking to me about, of all things, you were talking about Frozen. Now, what the heck were you talking about?
Listen, so first of all, I happen to have a 6-year-old girl in the house, and where, the pandemic is a thing, and it's also summer. So, she was watching, well, she wasn't watching Frozen 2 this time, actually. She was listening to some music in the background and dancing little ballet stuff like a 6-year-old girl would. And she was doing it Into the Unknown, and that song came on, it was good, and then later the actual version of it that came on with Panic at the Disco came out, and there's something special about tune. Oh, I'm like, wow. And I'm thinking to myself, this is actually good. How many times the Disney recorded artist gets it wrong versus listen, man, I know it was a big deal on D+. That's Disney Plus for you uninitiated. But on D+, Hamilton, right? Which I'm going to get around to seeing it, and I'll bring that up later another time. But the point is, I found out that the guy that wrote Hamilton also wrote the song and lyrics for You're Welcome, which for those who have seen our videos in the past know that me informing Demos he should be grateful is often done by me going, what can I say except you're welcome.
Thank you, Lin-Manuel Miranda. I appreciate that.
Well, at any rate, hey, listen, he helped me get in touch with the fact that I am a demigod, okay? But I say all that to say this. Then I come to find out he's also the same guy that performs his own song and does a Mickey Fireball bad job compared to what happens in the movie. You got outdone by The Rock, son. I mean, let me rephrase that. Getting outdone by The Rock should be something anyone takes in esteem, honor to. I'll be honest, if Dwayne The Rock Johnson knocked on my door and said, "Hi, Kyle, I'd like to talk to you," slapped me in the face, and then shook my hand afterward, I would have felt I was done a service, wouldn't you?
Well, if you were able to record it so we can play it on Hilarity by default, that would definitely be a hell of a service. Make us go viral overnight.
He does it, and I'm like, wait. That was great, Mr. Johnson. Can you do it again? Sure, if you promise to call me The Rock afterward. Bam! Yeah, that means he would get to do it twice.
Well, before we I will admit, I agree with you. I think that most of the Disney pop song versions of their popular songs, especially in the 90s, they never reached the same level as the film versions. And for me, that includes A Whole New World, Beauty and the Beast, Colors of the Wind. But the the Panic at the Disco version of Into the Unknown from Frozen 2 was actually fantastic as far as I was concerned.
So, are there any other exceptions that you would throw in? The one that comes to me is the one that was done for Remember Me was pretty good.
The one for Remember Me is the other big exception. In fact, I love that version of the song. That's my preferred version when I listen to it. But I guess in my head, I've always had this distinction between Pixar and Disney. I know it's their own, I know that Disney owns Pixar, but there is a bit of a distinction in my head.
There was a day where they were, well, they were rivals at one point. I get where you're going too, and a Disney nut such as yourself probably had trouble accepting for a fact that no longer are you at war. I get it, but the other one I could argue, it's not really that it's good or better. It's because it's kind of the same, and that's Demi Lovato doing "Let It Go." It's really like the same feel as the one that happens in the movie. So like, you can't really knock it. I don't know. That's the next closest one.
Well, I can't even remember the Demi Lovato version because the version from the film was played on the radio over and over and over and over, to the point where anything else has been blocked out in my mind.
He's gonna.
I've literally let it go.
Like you're gonna pop up in a cold sweat. The cold didn't bother me anyway.
I live in the north. In fact, I live in Rochester. We get more snow, which is shocking. This is shocking to statistic. This city gets more snow than any other American city, including cities in Alaska. So Frozen, for me, it's not a film. It's a documentary.
It's a way of life.
At this particular point. Well, before we go on, we have some shout outs. Wolf Cool says, hey, and he actually warned us about the audio issue. That's actually how I caught it. So thank you, Wolf Cool. Stephanie says, hey, I don't think she likes your D+, but...
Yeah, what's wrong with D+? D+ gives you Baby Yoda. How could anyone ever get mad at D+?
The plus censors unneedlessly. But that's a whole nother conversation. Although she says Disney Plus is the bomb. So thank you.
Oh no! Hey, listen. For what it's worth, I accept that some of these poor censorings are worthy of scrutiny and anger. I'm on board with you.
Yeah, they censor Daryl Hannah's beautiful rear end from Splash, but they make it a point to say that Hugh Jackman's glutes are not going to be censored from X-Men: Days of Future Past. So what are they trying to say? It's the double standards or whatever. I'm a big fan of no censorship. If I'm paying for a service, I don't want to see something censored. Regardless, make an adult, make a more mature audiences log in or something like Netflix does.
I want to see Hugh Jackman's butt just as much as I want to see Daryl Hannah's weight. That sounds really wrong. But listen, we don't want to be like the senator of Vermont and thank you for smoking and saying we're trying to improve history, right?
Improving history. Well, I do need to get around to see Hamilton. In fact, I've been scheduling it for a while. Supposed to see it over the weekend, but instead I ended up in New York City.
New York City. No,
I have to say, it was surreal driving through New York City. I was there on a Monday morning during the summer, and just to kind of give you guys a view of what New York City looks like now during the pandemic, I took a few pictures here. I mean, it is. There are some people out there, but the streets are very empty-ish. Barely people walking around, and of course, if you see them, they're all wearing the masks, so it does look like a post-apocalyptic city, except that all the billboards are still lit up. The Times Square was practically devoid of people, and they actually had a funny little sign promoting mask wearing, specifically to Phantom of the Opera, popularizing masks since 1980 something.
Nice.
It's insane. I kept thinking of I Am Legend, going through there. There's ever a time to film a movie set in post-apocalyptic New York, now's the time.
Hey, listen, but from what it sounds like, you actually happen upon a place where, like, they had bought that part of the city to keep it blocked off for a bit, like some productions do, and you just didn't realize it? Is that possible?
Yeah, they they blocked off the entire city, including Fifth Avenue, Times Square. I think the only place where I actually saw some people was driving through the Diamond District. It's also the only place that had cops. I wonder why.
Big production you were walking through. I have no idea how you managed to sneak through and that someone, excuse me, Mr. Euclid. Yes, we if you can, that'd be great. They know your name from this show, obviously, because Hilarity by default is sweeping the universe.
No, I actually know what I think. I think that I live in the Truman Show. I was the star of that production, except I didn't know it.
I'm not saying good afternoon, good evening, and good night. That's not going to happen.
There's an alien planet somewhere watching my life, and I just feel sorry for their form of entertainment.
Yeah, like that definitely is a show that should be canceled if the TV's worth a damn.
Hey, I mean, we live in an age of cancel culture, so for all I know.
Now it's not funny anymore. God dang it, Demos.
I just lost all my advertisers on that alien planet. But anyway.
Anyways.
Let's jump into who it could have been. Let me pull it up right here. There we go. This looks more comfortable. So, who it could have been. Every single week, we take a look at a famous actor or actress who was up for a big role, but for one reason or another, they didn't quite get it. Whether they've been better, worse, or just plain weird.
Yeah, kind of like that one time Demos auditioned to be the Cheshire Cat in the live version of Alice in Wonderland.
I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah,
better the Cheshire Cat than that weird dancing wide-eyed weirdo of a Mad Hatter that Johnny Depp played in the latest version.
Yo, that's some nightmare-inducing stuff, right?
I'll take the Cheshire Cat because then at least I could fade into the background.
Yeah, then you don't have to look at yourself in the mirror.
But today we'll be talking about Star Wars. A Star Wars film, specifically Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, which, if I were to rank the Star Wars films, at least between the prequels and the originals, I still consider that the weakest film in the series. Now, we're going to be taking a look specifically at Anakin Skywalker, played by Hayden, I don't like Sand Christensen. I always felt bad for this actor and the lines that he was given and the droll direction given by George Lucas. I think he gets a lot of unnecessary crap for this character. But
I mean, put it in perspective, Demos. They had Samuel L. Jackson as a Jedi, and the best one-liner they can hand this dude is, "This party's over." I mean, all you got to do is throw in a Mickey Fireball. "This party's over, Mickey Fireball." You know.
Well, I mean, that would have been foreshadowing for what Disney did to that series.
That's true.
But would you have felt better?
History, Demo.
Would you have felt better about Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith if, one, Leonardo DiCaprio played Anakin Skywalker?
You know, normally when we've done this in the past, I'm usually not quite this trite, but I could best answer that in only one expression. Duh! Are you kidding me? Listen, say what you want about DiCaprio. Even at that point, I know he was probably in his 40s by then. He's in his 50s now. Dude still looks like he's younger than me by a long shot, okay?
He must be taking the same injections Tom Cruise takes.
Like, here's a pop quiz, Demos. More timeless, young-looking dude, Leonardo DiCaprio or Dick Clark, okay? That's a tough one.
Right? I mean, he does have that quality. I mean, I'll be honest, even the blonde hair alone makes it look like Mark Hamill is a natural son of Leonardo DiCaprio in the Benjamin Button reverse kind of way. But Leo would have killed it. I think that he's a great actor. However, I don't know if the film would have been necessarily better off with him. I think that one of the aspects of Luke Skywalker, as played by Mark Hamill, and even Anakin Skywalker, is that you want to cast a relative unknown for that role. Hayden Christensen wasn't a very, very big name, so he kind of became He kind of became that role. Leonardo DiCaprio, if I were to watch that film, I would be thinking instantly, that's Leonardo DiCaprio in this film. Not to say that Leo doesn't disappear into his roles, but the types of roles that he picks aren't necessarily big popcorn action adventure films.
No, the closest popcorn thing he could be associated with, in my opinion, would either possibly, I mean, certainly Titanic's the answer. The next in line being, I don't know, Django. Like, he's not in a whole lot of popular stuff like that. I completely understand that point of view, Demos. However, let me put it to you this way: this isn't you're treating it like it's Harrison Ford popping up in E.T. Like, no, he's not just the principal. He's you could argue the lead man in that particular movie, or one of them, if you know, if you're like me and think Obi-Wan is actually the main character of the prequels, right? But I think that's a major enough character. This is Darth Mickey Fireball Invader here, okay? You can pull in a big name guy. I get the whole sci-fi indie vibe that Star Wars has, you know, birth of a career in the forms of Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher. I totally get all that, okay? But I feel like that's a big enough role where you could pull in a big name, and I'll see that and raise you this, Demosthenes. The fact that a big name guy like Leo might have garnered somebody to do a little better job of writing, but then again, I can't sign off on that fully because I just made the point I did about Samuel L. Jackson and one-liners. So there you go.
Hey, Harrison Ford could barely pull that off. I think that Leonardo DiCaprio would have had the same friction with George Lucas that Harrison Ford did when they made the original Star Wars, when he said something akin to, you can write this stuff, but you can't say it. When you look at the behind-the-scenes making of for Attack of the Clones, you'll see a couple of instances where Hayden Christensen actually got emotional, and he got really, I don't know necessarily emotional, but he said he played the role in a much more interesting way. And then you'd have George Lucas come in and say, I'll actually be a little bit more subdued. It was basically directed to be more wooden.
Is there any way you could suck more? Is that what if I turn on a vacuum cleaner in the next room, could that inspire you to suck?
I mean, the only person that came out of that trilogy, the prequel trilogy, retaining any kind of color or personality, with the exception of Ian McDiarmid, it was Ewan McGregor. And even some of his lines were pathetic.
Well, and I mean, you know, it's interesting when you have, listen, first of all, I think you and I both know if it were available in the Star Wars universe, Obi-Wan would be token. Token weed, I mean, not like, you know, elsewhere. No, like he'd definitely be hitting the ganj. Not that that's a problem, but I could see that. But more, you know, so if he's not always delivering poet laureate zingers, you know, it's because he's high. But I don't. I see where you're going, but I mean, listen, you basically got, you know, Ringo Starr accent, you know, trying to knock out big one-liners. It's not as effective as having Samuel L. Jackson, for example.
One-liners such as "Hello there" and "Good job."
Hello there. Well done.
Yeah. You know, I can't make fun of it too much because everybody remembers "Hello there." The Star Wars, the series that has such memorable lines as "Hello there, it's a trap."
It's a trap. Hey, you leave Admiral Ackbar alone, you son of a.
I know.
I will end you, Demos.
But I think that Star Wars in general, the films tend to benefit a little bit more from casting unknown or actors with less exposure in the main roles, and then casting the A-listers for the sub characters, such as Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan, or Peter Cushing as Tarkin, or even Samuel L. Jackson as Mace Windu. But even, I mean, once again, I think it would come down to the directing and the script, and even at that point, I don't know if Leo, I don't know if Leo would even interest him. I mean, he was considered for the role, but I can see why he may have, if he was offered, he'd walk away, because it would just be so evident, especially with him. It would be so evident. He would highlight the failure of the script writing.
Right. No, I agree with that too. And well, let me ask you this: is there any way I would assume not, but like Leo takes the meeting, let's say, and he reads the script. And he's like, "Listen, I love the concept. This dialogue needs work. Like what would happen?"
For all it's worth, I still get back to what I said earlier. I think Hayden Christensen did the best job that he could with what he got. I thought he vastly improved in Revenge of the Sith.
Well, the bar was set pretty low too. Let's be honest.
It does. It also helps. That tends to be I think universally accepted as the best of the prequels. Which actually brings us directly to our next segment. Well, tonight we have 20 different film franchises. And we're going to go over these franchises, and we're going to select between Kyle and I which films from these franchises are the best, which ones are the worst, and which ones happen to be our favorite, whether we think they're the best or the worst. Now, we have 20. Depending on how long this goes, we may just do 10 tonight and then 10 next week, but I'm going to see if we can power through all these. I'm also very curious to see which ones my co-host has or hasn't seen. Now, I noticed that Wolf Cool has been commenting quite a bit. He's made a lot of great suggestions to us, specifically for who it could have been, and there have been quite a few that we haven't been able to do because Kyle hasn't seen the movie yet. Edward Scissorhands is a fantastic example, but that I find that as a challenge. I'm like, okay, Kyle hasn't seen this, so coming this Christmas, we're doing an Edward Scissorhands required viewing. After that, we're probably going to do who it could have been.
Hey, listen. I talk all the trash jokingly, but I love. Listen, you guys, Demos, and you guys here are suggesting stuff that we do has broadened my movie horizons. When we started this show, 3 years ago, Demos, I hadn't seen The Godfather. And since then, I've seen The Light. I've come to understand exactly how powerful a character Vito Corleone is to the world of cinema. It's a wonderful thing, okay?
I'll be honest. I heard you do the impression way before we did that episode. So I'm like, right. How can this man be doing such a good impression and yet has never seen the movie? That's called talent, Demos. That's pop culture oversaturation. That's what.
No. I mean, actually, we're talking trash, but I mean that's how much of an impact the movie has had on the culture, right? I mean, it's not oversaturation per se. A lot of people lie about having seen The Godfather, but they still know that when you're scratching the bottom of your chin and you're talking like you haven't had a glass of water in 3 days, that's when you know it's Vito Corleone. It's very simple.
I should point out before we start, we had a couple of comments on our previous segment. Wolf Cool says Leo would have been better. Stephanie says the bigger problem lied in the script. Whether you dislike or like Hayden Christensen, I definitely agree with that. And Wolf Cool continues to say that Leo did indeed have a meeting with Lucas.
Let me say one thing about Hayden Christensen. I'll give him this much. He looked the part. We didn't really mention that, but he did look the part. I'll give him that much credit.
And yet he and Natalie Portman both have brown hair, and they gave birth to platinum blonde Luke Skywalker. Hey. Maybe those midichlorians at virgin birth had a little bit mess with the genes a little bit.
Maybe the Force hates brown hair. But then you know what? That's a bad plan. Anyways.
As a brown-haired gentleman, I disagree. The Force is with me, and it's very strong. At least it was until I saw the Disney trilogy. So, moving on. So, our first franchise that we'll be discussing is one that we actually have discussed before, but I want to see if our views have changed. And now that we're going to take into account some of the other films in this series, I want to see how our views look like in a broad perspective. We're going to start with Alien. So, Kyle, I'm gonna start with you. Which Alien film do you think is the best? And
generally tanks.
I'm sorry?
Alien's definitely my the best one. I would argue because I don't want to say the same movie twice, I'm going to say Alien's the best one. That Resurrection's my favorite one because that movie's fun. I don't care. And the worst one, I mean, that's Alien 3, right?
Um, maybe up until Resurrection came out, people would have argued that Alien 3 is the worst. For me, I think that the original Alien is the best. Aliens is my favorite. If I were to sit down, I would probably more likely watch Aliens for fun. It's much more of an action ride. Alien is that haunted house ghost story in space, and I really dig that. But it's not.
Scream, right? That says it all.
Yeah, it's not a film that I rewatch a lot, but Aliens is just a roller coaster ride. The worst, and mind you, I'm not including Alien vs Predator in this,
No.
either of those films. But if I were to pick the worst, I'd probably go with the most recent one, Alien Covenant.
I can support that. I didn't vote for that, but I ain't mad that you did.
At least Alien 3 was try to do something a little different, where I felt like Alien Covenant was, especially by the ending, it was kind of like a mixture of Alien and Aliens, and unfortunately, and really disappointingly handled by original director Ridley Scott. That film just did not work for me in any way whatsoever. And and I don't think Prometheus is a great film either, FYI, but I felt like it took a lot of the interesting ideas that Prometheus had and just threw it out the window or out the airlock along with the alien, because, spoiler alert, that's how they kill it again.
Hey, wait, that's great. If the prop is an airlock, then the director doesn't have to work so hard to tell it to suck more.
That's a very, very good point. Well, moving on, we're getting into Avengers. And for this, before we get to the Avengers film specifically, I want to break down the trilogy films, the solo character trilogy films. And for that, we're going to start with the guy that started it all. We're starting with Iron Man. Kyle, which do you think is the best, worst, or favorite Iron Man film?
So none of them are bad. I mean, we're clear on that. But
I don't know if we're clear on that.
I don't think Iron Man 2 was bad. Like, if the villain was better, it'd be a good movie, right? Are we in a disagreement there?
I don't think the biggest issues with Iron Man 2 are necessarily the villain.
Okay. Well, I don't know that we've examined Iron Man 2 closely. That's such a missed opportunity with Mickey Rourke. I'm gonna call that what it is too.
I can agree to that to a degree.
But I'll put it this way. Whenever it comes to Marvel, folks, please take this disclaimer at all times. There is no such thing as a bad Marvel movie in this guy's eyes. There's just one that's not as good. Okay. So,
which is the one that is not as good?
Yeah.
That
right.
doesn't include the comic book name in the title specific.
Correct. Yes. Well played. But yeah, I definitely have to go Iron Man 2 is the worst. Best is obviously, I don't think you can do better than Iron Man the way that was set up. Like, that was a cornerstone that set up a 3 movie franchise. Okay, you can't front on that. And listen, Iron Man 3 is fun. As fun as somebody experiencing post-traumatic stress syndrome can be. But Iron Man 3 is fun. So, I mean, that'd be my breakdown for it, too. Technically, the answer to favorite and best is the original Iron Man. But I have no problem giving favorite honors to 3 because Iron Man 1 would be the best overall, in my opinion.
I actually agree with you. Iron Man 1 is my I think the best. It is my favorite. I definitely believe Iron Man 2 is the weakest. Iron Man 3 felt like a sequel to both Iron Man and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang in a way. Shane Black taking over the writing duties and incorporating some of the running jokes from that incredible film into it. I think Iron Man 3 gets a lot of crap. And I get it if you're a comic book purist, but as a film, I thought it was a fun time. I didn't really, I didn't have too many issues with it. But the first Iron Man, I watched it again recently. I just suddenly, it really hit me how much grittier that first film felt.
Yeah.
It didn't feel as jokey as what followed, and it kind of became part of the Marvel formula. That scene where he arrives at the terrorist camp with a Mach 3 suit, and he's just blowing people away. I don't know if you'd see that in a modern day Marvel Disney film. If Iron Man is going to be that violent, it's going to be against an alien creature, not human beings.
Well, even still, at the time, I think it accurately captures the original Tony Stark. Right, he is having a revenge moment and kind of a breakthrough of what he's doing, and he's projecting that anger onto his captors. It's a perfect rendition, but I'm with you. I'm not so sure Disney would kick off a franchise with that feel. Now, granted, there's enough of the buddy cop stuff that goes on with he and Terrence Howard, because Don Cheadle hadn't been in yet, that went really well. I think if Howard stays in for the rest of the series, you still have a great chemistry between him and War Machine. Obviously, Don Cheadle maintains it because he's Don Mickey Fireball and Cheadle. But yeah, they had enough of that too, to where they were still that plucky Iron Man stuff that you come to know. But you're right with the dirt and the grit. I had the same exact reaction when I did a rewatch.
So let's move on. Let's move on to Thor.
Yeah,
I think that we're going to disagree on one thing right here, but I think that we can both jump off the bat and say that our weakest film in this trilogy would be The Dark World.
I believe we've said that is the least good of the Marvel 22. Yes.
Captain Marvel, I think, is the weakest of the Infinity War saga.
Okay, I'm not there though. Yeah, I meant the entire of all 22. You think Captain Marvel's worse of all 22? I thought we were on the same page with Thor 2.
No, Captain, it has nothing to do with the politics. It's more so characterization. I just did not enjoy watching that character.
No, I get you. I'm not telling you you're right or wrong. I'm trying to clear up.
Thor 2, even with its weak points, I enjoy watching Thor, and the midsection of the film where he and Loki team up is kind of enjoyable. In fact, I think after Loki disappears in the film, that I lose complete interest for the rest of it. But there was enough energy in that for me to rewatch it at my leisure.
Yeah. Hey, if nothing else, thank Thor 2 for giving us those same moments that we got to enjoy in Ragnarok. I'm just throwing that out there as a positive. Like, let's find that silver lining, Demos.
Well, speaking of silver lining, which one do you think is the best?
Man, listen. I think my favorite's going to be Ragnarok. I know you have your issues because you are who you are, and God bless you for it. I would put favorite and best on Ragnarok, but I mean, as far as the best done, again, you got to give Thor its credit for being able to start that part of the franchise while also doing its portion. Like that, Thor was the movie I felt like I could take my kids to see, among the original films. Like, I don't know that I would take a kid to see Captain America. I mean, with what we come to see, the grit that we see in Iron Man, but of all of them, like the one that looks like it's most out of a storybook, because, it makes sense to do because he's a god. Thor had that feel to it, and it did a good job with it.
I will say Thor, the original one, I think is the best. But my favorite on a rewatch is Ragnarok.
Yeah, it better be.
It is entertaining film. I think it has a lot of faults, and I've covered that pretty well on this show before. But
if you want to see it, it's there.
I listen. It has Jeff Goldblum in it. Of course, it's going to be my favorite to rewatch.
I mean, apartments.com. Thank you.
So moving on, let's talk about Captain America.
Yes.
I'm very curious about this, to be honest. Which do you think is the best, worst, and favorite in the Captain America franchise?
So for those who don't know, I find that Winter Soldier is literally the most overrated film in the franchise.
Blasphemy.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, facts. Handle it. All right. Upon rewatch, I tried to give it when the Plus first came out and I had my subscription, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to see if it's me. It's not me. It's that Mickey fireballing of Falcon jumping out the building while it's falling and they catch him without his wings. I can't, Demos.
He lands in a helicopter. I mean,
Demos. So, no, and like, they when they're doing all the different mask shifts and reveals and all this stuff, to be honest, it felt like it was trying to imitate a Mission Impossible movie. Okay, now granted, it's probably better than a lot of Mission Impossible movies, but
we'll get to that.
Yeah, right. I couldn't get behind any of that to the same extent a lot of people did, but I'm not going to say it's the worst. Civil War, you watch this movie, and it's not, again, there is no bad MCU movie in my opinion, okay? But let's be honest. Y'all and me went in that movie seeing that one big scene. We saw it, and we're happier for the experience, and remembered very little else except all of it was Captain America's fault because Captain America's bad at his job. But for me, the one that's that's underrated while Winter Soldier is overrated is the First Avenger. Captain America First Avenger is an awesome movie. I think it's the best of them. It's also my favorite, but I'll give the fun award to Winter Soldier. There are things in it that are cool. The fights in it are bomb. I get it, but
they're very tension filled.
Absolutely, and I mean, listen, I just there is something special about the scene where Captain America's like, with the helicopter. I can't. My biceps not that big anymore. I don't hit the gym as often. Okay, but yeah, the worst movie is definitely Civil War.
I agree with you on Civil War, and in fact, Daniel Ulrich just chimed in and said that he loves Civil War, but it's Avengers 2.5, and that's actually one of the reasons that I have an issue with that film. It has a lot of high points. I actually really like the dynamic between Iron Man and Captain America. Robert Downey Jr. knocks out of the park. But when I walk out of a Captain America film and I'm like, wow, the best performance in that film was Robert Downey Jr., you got a problem. The airport fight scene, a lot of fun, but once again, it is very much Avengers 2.5. My favorite is Winter Soldier, and I think one of the things I like about that film in particular, especially on a rewatch, is it feels very, very different from almost all the other Marvel films. It has a very distinct tone. It tried to go in a different direction, taking the character, the ultimate patriotic character of Captain America and thrusting him into a world of grays, I thought was very, very interesting. It has its flaws. I agree. The helicopter scene is ridiculous, especially for this film, but I really did enjoy it. First Avenger, I really like it. And I agree with you. It is underrated. I like the quasi-Rocketeer vibe of that film. Same director, Joe Johnston.
As bad as the Rocketeer is, I have always said up front about that, even in our review, which, hopefully you could check out on the Hilarity by Default channel. I've always liked the look and feel of that. I mean, it's the same with Dick Tracy, even. I'll say that too. Like, the look and feel of those movies is great. They're just not that great of movies beyond that skin deep appearance, in my opinion. But Captain America First Avenger solved for that.
It nailed the most important thing, and it nailed the characterization of Stephen Rogers.
Absolutely.
And when people, and I see somebody here, Stephanie just said that Captain Marvel was the worst of the series, and I want to compare Captain Marvel to Captain America. Look at their both of their origins, and we can actually do an entire deep dive on that. But they really nailed the characterization with Stephen Rogers. You knew everything you needed to see about the character. You saw his struggle very, very vibrantly in that film. The scene alone, if Captain Marvel had a scene in her film akin to Stephen Rogers jumping on the the hand grenade to save everybody else, I dare say it would have been a hell of a lot better film.
It's a fantastic point, Demos. I hadn't thought of that concept. I'll see that and raise you this. Heck, if I could just get us something as tension-filled and with the stakes as high as him chasing the Hydra agent who kills himself with the cyanide, you get nothing like that in Captain Marvel.
No, and this isn't meant to be a Captain Marvel hate fest.
No. But we're doing that. We're juxtaposing the two of them to show where Captain Marvel does it right. It's less about trashing Captain Marvel and more on how Captain America does well.
Mm-hmm. Now, we did get one other one other comment. First Avenger is better than Wonder Woman with regards to World War II action. Well, Wonder Woman was World War One action.
Right. He's not wrong, but to say Wonder Woman is bad, I don't think that's what's happening. I think Wonder Woman was less focused on the war concept than was Captain America. It was more about like the World War One concept was, although a large part of it, only first part of the movie, right? By the end, you know, she's dealing with Ares and all that, and I think Demos and I would agree. I don't know that we reviewed the movie.
We did. Actually, we one of our first live.
It's our
yeah,
that's right. But which we may do that sometime. But I think you and I agree that the biggest problem was the transition to Ares, and we know why they did it that way. They were trying to create the suspense, but it didn't land.
The third act, I think universally people agree that the third act of Wonder Woman is the weakest portion of that film. But I still maintain, especially since I don't want to get too political, but especially in the case where politics and agendas seem to be taking front and center stage before story and character in a lot of films nowadays, Wonder Woman was an example of how to do it right, because
definitely I'll agree with that.
It supported the themes of the film, and they provided a very good counterbalance, and they didn't spoon feed you. They weren't standing on a hilltop. There's a famous scene where she jumps out of the trenches and runs into no man's land. A poorer film would have had her say something I'm not saying that this is a poorer film, but would have taken a page out of Lord of the Rings, and she would have said, "I am no man," and done it. Wink, wink at the audience. Everybody's clapping. No. She just did it, and that made you respect the character. She didn't need to throw out a punchline or spell out the film's themes in big red, bold font with neon lights. She just did it.
Yeah, they didn't need to randomly bust out, "I'm just a girl." Oh wait, I didn't even mean to do it like that. Sorry, right, Captain fans.
Well, let's move on to the last of our Avengers lineup, and this, surprise, surprise, we're going to talk about the Avengers films themselves, specifically Avengers Age of Ultron, Infinity War, and Endgame. Which is the best, worst, and favorite out of these?
So let's get the worst out of the way. It's not that Age of Ultron's a bad movie; it's just nothing near the other three.
Agreed. I'm on point with that. I really want to find out what you think is the best out of this one.
Yo, man, I gotta tell you for a fact though, like that to me, that's a day of the week question. Like I could say, I could. One of these has to go home without an honor. That's problem one, right? And the day of the week could determine my answer here. I'm going to go with my instinct though. I'm going to say that the best one was the original. It's you can't do much better than that battle in New York. And we all know it by now if you've seen that movie in a bit, but that roundabout money shot that gets all the group there together, ready to poise right before Cap drops the orders, and then everybody eating shawarma at the end. Okay. But the buildup was pretty good too, right? I mean, the whole thing with the Hulk in the helicarrier was cool in itself, bringing in all the characters. The whole scene where you have the mini skirmish between Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man was all great. The boom, the hammer on the shield was awesome. So you got to give it its credit as the original film. But the reason why I broke all that down so much is because I'm stalling for what my favorite one is for the other.
I was wondering.
But for I mean, I'm just gonna hit instinct and say Infinity War. But like, this is definitely one of those where I'd say 1A and B, right? Like, it's an extension of the same thing. Okay, it gets a little cheesy with the time travel stuff, but it's time travel stuff. Of course it does. Well,
bad mouth Back to the Future too. I don't know if I can still forgive that.
It didn't it just badmouthed the science. Great Scott, Demos.
You badmouth the science, and yet you have more plot holes, and Back to the Future 2 had all The entire Back to the Future trilogy had in one film. But I can't
think-
really hate on that because Endgame is like 3 films in one as it is.
Correct. Yeah. And listen, I love the stuff where Hulk goes back to see the Supreme drat.
Sorcerer Supreme.
Thank you, Sorcerer Supreme. I said Supreme and then I got lost in a giant sandwich. Apparently I'm still hungry.
That's actually what ran through my head too. I have to admit.
But no, that was all great. Of course, the final battle scene's great. I'm sorry, Captain America handing Mjolnir was stupid. I didn't like it, but executed it well enough to where I could let it slide. When everyone else is cheering, I'm like, really, guys, really? But the whole thing, where the whole sequence with the hammer getting passed off and Thor going like, I want the big one, and all that. They did enough playful stuff with it where I'm like, you know what? Okay, you can have it. I liked it a lot. And listen, I had some feels with Endgame, like the whole "I love you 3000" thing. My fault. I have a daughter at home. It hits me a certain way. I got a little misty with all that. But I would still say that I would rewatch Infinity War first.
I will say my favorite is the original. At the time, people were saying, how could they pull it off when they have 5, 6 major characters? And I think Marvel obviously did very well by introducing them all in their solo films.
Let me ask you, do you think it's because everybody was still kind of scarred a little bit, even going back as far as Spider-Man 3 with Sam Raimi?
Oh yeah, the oversaturation of villains and so forth. I mean forget about Spider-Man 3. That goes all the way back to the original Batman films as well.
I mentioned Spider-Man 3 because it was the most recent thing I could think of at the time before that could have, left that impression. You know what I mean?
No other comic book movie had achieved that scale that the original Avengers did with that type of quality. It definitely was a feat when it pulled it off as well as it did. But the best one in the franchise, I think, is Infinity War, and it pulls off an even more incredible feat. Because instead of dealing with 5, 6 characters, now you're dealing with 70, and that film should not have worked as well as it did. It clearly should not. We say that a lot when we do our Briscoe County reviews. It shouldn't work, but it's
my joke. I didn't see Bruce Campbell in there one time. What are you talking about?
He might be appearing in Doctor Strange too.
Nice. I can get behind that.
Sam Raimi's directing it, so Bruce Campbell has to be in it.
Nice.
So yeah, Sam Raimi's going from Spider-Man to Doctor Strange. That should be very interesting.
I didn't know about that, so I'm ready to go. Listen, I'm a Doctor Strange guy.
But Infinity War, for as many characters and subplots and everything that's going in, it just is so well balanced. I was literally shocked at how well it worked, and it gained quite a bit of respect for that balance. I don't think Endgame achieved that type of balance, but it was a very, very different type of film. And it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. It feels like 3 films in one, where Infinity War is just all over the place. Just as you're watching it, you're thinking, well, I haven't seen this character in a little while. Boom. Almost on point. And I think for me, the highlight is seeing Iron Man and Doctor Strange go off each other. That was fantastic. Thor was great, and Thor was so good in Infinity War that it made his appearance in Endgame feel even worse for me.
Listen, Fat Thor was the bomb, and you need to shut your face.
Fat Thor, yeah, because he ate too much and he was about to explode. That's why he was the bomb.
Okay, you know what? You've made worse jokes. I like it. Keep going.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, I think Infinity War is the best. The original Avengers is my favorite, and Age of Ultron is the weakest. But now is about time to get off of the Avengers, and we mentioned it before. Right now, we're going to talk about the original Tim Burton quadrilogy Batman films. I know he only did the first 2. He produced the third, but for the sake of clarity, we're just going to talk about these 4 films as the Burton franchise.
Can we throw out Batman and Robin because we already know what we're going to say about that, right?
Yeah, I think we're on the same page for Batman and Robin.
Um, obviously the best one is numero uno. But listen, I'll give two its due. Danny DeVito, it was amazing as the Penguin, and he was a fit for the part not just because of his height. He happens to be a good actor. Michelle Pfeiffer, of course, is that you can't find a better version of Catwoman. It doesn't happen right now. You can't do it.
They had to vacuum her into that suit.
I heard. Listen, the suit isn't the reason why I like that character in that movie either. I was too young to appreciate what the suit was doing for her. And even in this day and age, it's not my favorite thing about the character. Just the whole the confidence which she commands after so successfully being very talented, setting the stage as being a flaky Selena Kyle. We talk a lot about it in actually one of our Who Could Have Beens, where we were considering Madonna at one point, right? Check that out if you haven't seen it yet. But yeah, I it's unfortunately not the best, right? I wouldn't put it as favorite or best, but it's still a hell of a showing.
The thing about her performance as Catwoman in specific that I really liked is she presented herself very perfectly ambivalent. You never quite knew what she was going to do, whether she would be, she was a perfect. I don't even want to say anti-hero because, but yeah, I mean, as far as Batman villains go, she was the closest to an anti-hero that we saw, the traditional anti-hero that we saw in those first 4 films.
Wild card is what I would call her.
Yeah, that's even better. A wild cat.
I see what you did there. Don't do it again. No, but
it was perfect. I did it again.
No. Okay, listen. I work with you here. I'm trying not to make fun of how bad your jokes are, but when you come out with perfect, no, Demo.
That's why I call the channel Hilarity by default, because at the very least you can laugh at us, so it works out.
The cat pun. Put that joke in the litter box, okay? Anyways, no, no, man. I find it ironic that for somebody who uses fireball and mouse quotes to edit ourselves, we're talking about cat jokes now. We're versatile. What can I say? No,
if this defines versatility, we really should go into politics. That's all.
Yeah. Anyways, but it's very interesting to hear you make the statement. There's not many anti-heroes in the Batman movies,
with the exception of the main character. Do I really need to spell that one out?
Yeah, it's you didn't say it. I knew you meant it.
But that's what I was getting at. That's actually what makes it interesting. Is right. that seeing that pairing, because you get the flip side, you get the mirror image. In fact, if anything, it's kind of funny that they went with the pairing of Catwoman and Penguin, because the mirror image between Batman and Catwoman, the second villain of that film should have been Two-Face. You could have really brought we really could have done an interesting dissection of that particular theme. And they set it up in the first film with Billy D. Williams, and they just dropped it.
Yeah, no, I think that could have gone well. But I can see why they stuck with Oswald Cobblepot at the time for 2 reasons. A, he was, in my view, he was the second, and as somebody who didn't read the comics, obviously, he was the second most popular character I knew, right? Usually it's Cesar Romero that from the old 60s Batman, and then Burgess Meredith for Penguin, Rocky's manager, obviously, from the Rocky movies before he dies in 3. Spoilers, no, but so from the marketing standpoint, you could see why that happened. Oswald Cobblepot, aka Penguin, being the gangster and criminal mastermind type, who's more of a, what's his word, organized crime boss than a clown prince of insano of crime, like the original Joker was with Nicholson. It makes sense, but I can definitely see an argument for putting Two-Face in play as well. But then you have 2 mirror images battling Batman. That could have gotten complicated.
Well, I don't want to go into full dissection. In fact, I'd rather save that for a full episode, because I do want to cover the Batman films at one point. I honestly think I don't honestly think this, but I think that
No,
Tim Burton had this image of Michelle Pfeiffer taking a live bird and putting it in her mouth. And they're like, which character would have a bird? The penguin is a bird. That's why.
okay, I get it.
Yeah, that I would say that Batman Returns is my favorite. The original Batman is the best. Do I need to explain that? Batman and Robin. Well, there's a bird that should have stayed in its cage.
Hey, but listen, I'm gonna say this, and it might be an unpopular opinion. Deal with it. Batman Forever is good. It's fun. I liked it.
They're talking about doing a special edition of that, an extended cut, and that would interest me because a lot of what was cut out of Batman Forever was the darker, more gothic aspects to that story. So maybe it will work, maybe it won't, but I'm intrigued to see.
Jim Carrey was born to play the Riddler.
Probably the best part of that film.
Easily the best part of that film.
But let's talk about the Nolan trilogy of Batman films, the Dark Knight trilogy. Even though only two of the films are called Dark Knight, I'm curious about this one. I think that we can both agree on which one is the best.
Yeah, a guy literally gave his life to deliver the best Joker you've seen in live action. We'll leave it at that. Begins. I mean, listen. I've said this many times, and I stay with it. The only problem with Dark Knight Rises, the biggest problem with Dark Knight Rises is, Demos, it came after The Dark Knight and Batman Begins, okay?
It didn't rise to the occasion, is what you're telling me.
Perfectly put, and it's even a good pun by you. Well done, Demos. Yeah,
happens once in a while. Mark this moment.
Well, you're the one that has the feed, so you'll have to mark the time. But commenters, let them know what the time was on that. But no, it's not a bad movie. It's just, one, it's trying to do too much, okay? Bane, the whole Rise thing. You got Ra's al Ghul's daughter in there, hidden, air quotes, hidden. And then you're trying to shoehorn Catwoman in there, which, don't get me wrong, I see what you're doing there. Very good choice of character. And then also trying to give us Jason Gordon-Levitt as
Robin.
The guy, that you're trying to set up for Robin. Okay, but and you got the entire
last name happens to be Robin.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then you got the entire roster of the Pittsburgh Steelers in there. Okay, cute. I get it.
It's the most ordinary looking of the three, and yet it has most of the comic book tropes in it, which is hilarious.
Maybe they're trying to balance it out. I don't know, but there's no way that I could put it. I can't put all that ahead of Liam Neeson's. I mean, to quote Key and Peele, Liam Neeson's is my Mickey Fireball. Okay.
I agree with Wolf Cool. Dark Knight and Batman Begins are the best in that series. I will say that Batman Begins, Batman Begins is a film that has been overshadowed by the success and acclaim of The Dark Knight. I really enjoy Batman Begins, and it definitely feels more Batman-y in spirit than The Dark Knight, which is much more wildly publicized as as being inspired by crime films such as Heat and so forth. Heath Ledger, fantastic Joker. The chaotic element that he brought clearly defines what I like in that character. Batman Begins, unfortunately, is going to have to sit as my favorite, but Dark Knight, I think, is clearly the best.
Sure, well, but Batman Begins should be more Batman-y. They're introducing the character just like Dark Knight. Dark Knight he's the title of the movie. He's the focus of the movie. I get it. But we both know that movie's there to exist for the Joker's sake, right?
I wouldn't go that far, depending on what you mean by that. But as a showcase for that character, yeah,
absolutely.
But unlike the Burton films, where I think that the villains, in many cases, overshadowed Batman, I think this one is very well balanced between a Batman and the villains. The sole focus is on Batman coming against this chaotic force and having to deal with something as illogical as it. I think that's what makes the film very intriguing, and I think that obviously for me, the most interesting scene in that film is the interrogation scene between him and
Easily.
Joker. Yeah, it's probably the best scene in the whole trilogy.
As far as weight, I'll allow it. For me, my favorite one is still, I'm gonna make this pencil disappear. Ta-da!
All right. So let's move away from the comics, and I don't know how many of these films you've seen, which will make it an interesting discussion. We're gonna move into Jason Bourne. Of course, we've had the Bourne Identity, Bourne Supremacy, Bourne Ultimatum, Bourne Legacy, and Jason Bourne.
I did not see Jason Bourne.
The newest one, Matt Damon's return as the character in 2016.
And I assume you're not counting the one with Hawkeye, because if you
No,
are,
I'm including that because I think it will make my answer to which one's the worst probably more interesting.
I have not seen the one with Hawkeye, but
So you've seen the original trilogy.
yes.
Okay. So,
Here's the thing. Like when it comes to the Bourne movies, I'm gonna say the second one's the worst, but it's not. Again, we're back to it's not bad, but I definitely got that feel like you're here to connect these other two movies, aren't you? I didn't know of the books, but after I saw the second one, I'm like, there's a third one, isn't there? And my wife was like, oh yeah, there's totally a book for it. Of course, because it involved, but just because it involved Matt Damon. Of course, the wife was all up in it, but
yeah, the second and the third books are vastly different than the films. So the title is the only thing they carried over. The plots are vastly different. No, I mean, I don't even think any of the same characters, with the exception of Bourne, are in it.
But for me, like the opening sequence, the getting to know you with Jason Bourne and establishing the conspiracy and the mystery, that was the most fun for me. I liked what they did with Julia Stiles in it in the third one.
Ultimatum.
Right. But yeah, the Identity is definitely the superior movie for me.
I will agree. The best one I think is the original, the Bourne Identity. It was the one that I could actually understand what was happening in the action scenes, which I think is important. Supremacy had some cool action scenes, but I literally had to watch it like 3 or 4 times to figure out what the heck was happening. Ultimatum had a better balance. It was filmed with a little bit more care. They definitely learned from the mistakes they did filming Supremacy. And I think that's why Ultimatum for me is my favorite. The weakest film in this series, I know this is going to shock a few people because a lot of people discount Legacy, but I will say the newest one, Jason Bourne, for me was the weakest. And
Sure.
the reason being is it didn't really do anything new for me. It kind of felt like a best of, and it didn't reach the heights of any of the scenes from the original trilogy. At least Legacy tried to do some new things with its plot, try to introduce a new character, try to introduce a new organization, and a new twist, which I don't want to give away if you haven't seen it. You can think of what you want of Jeremy Renner. I don't have any. I think he gets a lot of hate. I don't know.
Pro for the record,
I thought he was fine in that film. And at least it had some unique action scenes. I don't think it lived up to the original trilogy, and if it wasn't for Jason Bourne as a film, it would have been the weakest. But that new film, I was not a fan of it. I honestly, I could probably rewatch all the other Jason Bourne films with the exception of the one that's titled Jason Bourne. I mean, I now I know why they didn't call it Born Again, because it failed in every way. But going from Jason Bourne, we're gonna go look at another badass. We're gonna look at John McClane, Die Hard.
This is easy. Like, first of all, I didn't see 405, and it's because I knew from the previews I didn't bleed need to. Okay. For my money, the original is tops. Let's be clear. Yippee-ki-yay, Mickey Fireball. All right. But if you didn't know that was coming, Demos, that's a you problem.
No, no, no. I approve wholeheartedly.
But Die Hard with a Vengeance is a sneaky good movie. Yo, I listen, maybe it's simply because Samuel Jackson's in it. Maybe it's because Jeremy Irons is in it and is a comical version of Scar. One could argue. But listen, man, on 3 separate occasions, when I was younger, when I was a little older, like in high school, in college, and as an adult in my late 30s, 3 separate times, I'm like, it can't really be that bad, can it? I couldn't stay awake through Die Hard 2. I couldn't do it.
Really?
I kept falling asleep through Die Hard 2. I'm sorry. Like, first of all, I like the actor that plays the villain. I could have done without him doing a kata naked, but okay, that's a me problem. Fine, I can get over that. But no. Like, first of all, to try the toughest thing watching it as an adult now is trying to understand how they were so lenient with John McClane in security in the airport. There is no fireballing way that John McClane would allow to roam all about the dang premises the way he does in this day and age in an airport. Granted, obviously, that's pre 9/11.
I find that easier to believe than a bridge falling on him and walking away in the fourth one. It's called Die Hard, but the title does not refer to how hard it is to kill John McClane. He's not Superman. Even Superman would have had like a cut on his face at the end of a bridge falling on him.
Tapped out. I get it.
And if you doubt it, he does get hurt sometimes in the comics. So
yeah.
The original is by far the best, and it is. And any other day, I'd also say it's my favorite. But if I want to pick something different for the sake of variety, I would easily say With a Vengeance is. It's a rewatchable roller coaster ride. I definitely enjoy it, and I also like the fact that it was a different premise than Wrong Place, Wrong Time, which was the key to the first two. It definitely built up on the originals. The first film you had a building, the second film you had an airport, and the third film you had a city, and the fourth one they tried to do a country. It didn't quite work, and the fifth one, I don't know what the hell they were trying to do with the fifth one. The alternative title might as well have been A Good Film to Skip.
A good day to skip movies.
The fifth one it's an atrocity. The only thing they had going for it was at least it was a rated R film again. And yet it still felt more it felt more flaccid than the PG-13 one. So what the hell do you say?
I've heard that criticism. Yeah, it's rated R, which only allows you to say that when it comes to this movie, I don't give a beep. You thought I was going to say it, didn't you?
It's rated R for language. That's it. That's it, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I don't remember anything about... The only things I remember about that film is just how... damn, the bridge falling on him was more realistic than anything that happened in that fifth film.
Other than the part that he survived.
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna leave it at that because this next one is gonna be a little bit tricky.
It's tricky.
Harry Potter. Yes, and for this I am gonna include the Fantastic Beasts films.
I wasn't gonna waste my time with those. You're out your damn mind.
Well, if you haven't seen them, you can stick to the original. I have different answers if you were to include them or not. So.
Right. Yeah, no, I ain't even remotely interested. Man.
We have talked about Harry Potter before. We had a guest on, Jen Juno from People Magazine, joined us to discuss some Harry Potter theories. But as a film franchise, it's a lot of people diverge. I think there's one film that people tend to universally agree is the best one. But I'm curious to see if you would agree with that assessment.
I'm going to lead with the first episode of The Deathly Hallows being the worst. And it's not that it's bad. There isn't, in my opinion, none of the Harry Potter movies were in and of themselves bad. But, let's follow the kids on a scavenger hunt that's scary, air quotes, scary. Didn't do it for me. But I didn't necessarily, I wasn't one of these people that went to the first, went to the Fellowship of the Ring was like, why did it end like that? Hey, dummies, it's a trilogy. They told you this all over the place. It's literally called Deathly Hallows Part 1, so no one could screw that up. I respect that. But, and it did end strong, but there's no way I would say Hallows Part 2 was the best movie either.
But, using the word Hollows in the title of a film that has so much camping kind of makes sense.
I get okay.
I get a very nature vibe out of that.
Okay. I listen. For me, if I'm going to the movies to see nature, I want a story about that. I want a protagonist that's more like Steve Irwin than Uncle Smiley. I'm saying. And anyways,
Harry Potter and the Crikey of Gosh.
and the crikey of gosh, look at this bugger. Dude, can you imagine Steve Irwin as the herbology teacher? That's awesome. Crikey, look at this plant, Harry. Anyway.
Oh man, that would have beat Endgame at the box office. That's oh, rest in peace, Steve Irwin.
Absolutely. See, for me, I mean,
no, I just have this image of him playing with Voldemort. Look at the snake! Look at this magnificent creature! he's trying to manhandle Voldemort.
Anyways, we're here in House Slytherin, the home of the snake. Look at this big bugger, right?
Chamber of Secrets would have instantly been a more interesting film.
Yeah, gosh. And again, Chamber of Secrets wasn't necessarily bad either. Oh, look at the mighty Phoenix as he flies around with its tears. No, listen, Sorcerer's Stone's good. It's basically a kids movie, but that's okay. What I've been told that my pick for the one I like the most is kind of nutty. I was a fan of The Goblet of Fire. I appreciated that movie the most. Was it the best done of the group? I'm not prepared to say so. There was a lot of cool things they did with the setup that you can't, and it's a vibe you can't get anywhere else because it's the first movie. So I can make it. There's a good argument that The Sorcerer's Stone has its place as one of the top movies in the franchise, but I like The Goblet of Fire, man. I don't feel like there's anything in that movie that was particularly dry. The whole things where the other schools came in, where they played around a bit with the Quidditch World Cup at the beginning was all fun.
Kick-ass dragon scene.
I was going to get to the dragons, certainly as part of the Triwizard tournament. They had some stuff messing around where, Harry's down there and he in one of the trials and he wants to save them both, but he can't. And both his friends are down there. It's all a thing. I get it. But I can certainly see arguments for other movies. I know that Prisoner of Azkaban is a popular one. I like that movie too. And hey, listen, Gary Oldman's a win. Thank you very much. I get it. But yeah, I'm going to go with Goblet of Fire.
Goblet of Fire as the best?
My favorite.
Your favorite. Which one do you think is the best?
So, I'm going to go. I don't remember the name of the one after Goblet of Fire. I'm struggling with that right now.
Order of the Phoenix.
Order of the Phoenix. I'm going to say best is Order of the Phoenix.
That's interesting. For me, I think that the best one, as far from a filmmaking point of view, is Azkaban, Prisoner of Azkaban. The best score overall. I liked that it was, even in the cinematography, reflected the maturing of the characters in the story. I love the relationship that he built with Lupin. It was an incredible time. I really enjoyed that film. For me, the worst one, if you were to include the Fantastic Beasts films, Crimes of Grindelwald was atrociously bad. The script was all over the place. Subplots didn't make sense. Ideas were brought up and never well executed. The focus on the characters was terrible. I honestly, if I were to be introduced, if I started watching the Harry Potter films with Fantastic Beasts, like, let's just live in a world where all the Fantastic Beasts films have come out, and somebody decided to watch them in order, like watching the Star Wars films in order, starting with Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, I probably would have checked out after the second Fantastic Beasts.
Right.
The first one was okay. Nothing great, but that second one, wow. Terrible film. If I were to stick with the original Harry Potter films themselves, this is a strange case because Half-Blood Prince is my favorite book in that series. And everything that I found intriguing about that book, for the most part, was excised from the film adaptation. Where it basically the book focused quite a bit on the backstories of Snape and Voldemort. Awesome. It's the perfect setup to the final book. It had a couple of subplots about the blooming romances between the characters, but the focus specifically was on Voldemort's backstory and the introduction of the Horcruxes. The movie? The subplot is about Voldemort. The Snape thing is pretty much washed over with a throwaway line that doesn't make any sense if you haven't read the books. And the focus was on the teenage drama. I mean, talk about mixed priorities. Holy crap. It was the most disappointing film in the series for me. And even if I hadn't read the books, I think it still would have been the most disappointing entry in the series because without those key that key focus, it becomes a superfluous film practically in this series.
I mean, I would have to agree that that's my least favorite film on one thing. I can't remember a damn thing about it.
Hence what I mean. It's superfluous. The most important thing that happens is the spoiler. The Harry Potter spoiler. You know, blank kills blank.
Right.
Although I know we revealed the Rocky spoiler, so why am I blanking on that one? but anyway, as far as my favorites, it's kind of funny in this particular case because if I look at the book series, my least favorite book is Order of the Phoenix, which I think is my favorite film in the original series. So it's completely inverted. Although I would say that I think Goblet of Fire is right up there. So this will be a case where I give it a tie because I think Goblet of Fire has a lot of rewatchability.
Ties. But
I'm sticking with Order of the Phoenix. It's a kind of a tie. Order of the Phoenix is probably my favorite upon rewatch, but from a filmmaking point of view, Azkaban is definitely the best in the series for me.
Yeah. Well, listen. You say 1 and 1A. You don't say a tie.
All right, bad choice of words. I'll edit it out. It's not like we're live or anything.
Oh, damn it.
Speaking of being live, we have now reached the 10th one in our countdown. We got any
comments lately? If we don't, that's cool.
We have had a few comments. I was about to go over them. Let's see. Stephanie says the thing with Fantastic Beasts is that they didn't have books to base the story off of. It was from scratch.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me, Stephanie. I was going to ask you, but I think she made the point better for me. Do you think it's because they're kind of parting from Rowling? Are they suffering the same way that the Game of Thrones final season suffered by having less involvement from George R.R. Martin, right?
If George R.R. Martin was the guy who wrote the scripts for season 7 and 8, then it'd be a comparison. J.K. Rowling is the sole screenwriter for the last two, for all of the Fantastic Beasts films.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, she didn't write the scripts for any of the other Harry Potter films.
I see. So she's got a Lucas problem. I mean, what?
It's a different animal writing a script or an adaptation as opposed to a screenplay.
Did you just say it's a different animal when it comes to writing Fantastic Beasts?
Yes, I did. And she agrees. There lies the problem. And she also happened to say so many face palms earlier. I think it was when we went on our little pun to raid, maybe about cats.
You started it. You started it.
Of course I started it. I could have kept it going, but I actually have some respect for our audience.
The commenters.
Wolf Cool says, Steve Irwin, rest in peace, man. Totally agree. He also says Die Hard 5 is the worst. Stephanie says Die Hard 5 is the worst. As far as Bourne, Stephanie says there was no point in doing the fourth one with this new random character. I don't want to say there was specifically no point. If they were going to continue the franchise, that was the best way of doing it. I don't think it was particularly successful in doing so. And the only reason it's not worse is because of Jason Bourne, the newer film, which is it's even more forgettable than the Jeremy Renner one. So what the hell does that mean?
Well, I mean, I'll give Stephanie this much credit is it's a bit of a hindsight point, but I see where she's coming from, right? Like at the time when you're trying to conceive it, like you got to do something to make it fresh if you're considering continuing the series. So the obvious thing is using a different soldier. If that landos, like let's say they use Danny Glover instead of Jeremy Renner, if that landos, then it's not a waste of time.
Instead of Danny Glover, I literally thought of Donald Glover. I'm like, man, he would be too old for that. Yeah. I will definitely watch that, though. I will definitely be the first person in line to see the Bourne Glover. It'd be great.
Glover. That's just a good name. Anyways, but had it landed, it's one of those things where you are going to come out looking like a genius or like a dummy before it started. There was no middle ground with that particular installment. So if it fails, it's easy to say after the fact, hey, you know what? It turned out that wasn't worth our time. I get where she's coming from.
And she does say that they didn't need to continue because the original 3 were done and dusted. Ultimatum, the Glover identity. Ultimatum, I felt was a nice stop point for that series, and it kind of left it ambiguous of whether he was going to end up with Julia Stiles, what the next step was going to be. I really liked that ending for the character. And Jason Bourne, it just, I used the word superfluous earlier to describe something else. I really felt that Jason Bourne was superfluous. It felt like it was trying to to jumpstart a new storyline, and it hasn't gone anywhere since. So it really just feels like this open-ended epilogue that just does not feel fulfilling in any way, shape, or form. And there's nothing unique about it to be an interesting epilogue to begin with.
Hey, all I could say is the first 3 movies are Matt Damon, and the last one is Matt Damon. Okay.
Stephanie says it's like doing Toy Story 4. There was no point. Let it go. Move on. We will be talking about Toy Story next week when we cover the back half of our look at best and worst in a franchise. Well, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you guys so much for joining. This was our first live stream. We definitely had a couple of hiccups there at the beginning, but as far as I'm concerned, it turned out a heck of a lot better than I expected. Kyle, do you have any parting words?
No, hey, listen, this is the first, this isn't the first live production I've done, but it's the first one I've done in the entertainment region. So that was a good time. Thank you, Demos. Great time all the way around. If you want to find anything that I do with entertainment or sports alike, find me on Twitter at the SOTG. Find me on Instagram as the same, the SOTG. Find me on Facebook as the Student of the Game. Hey, listen, you happen to like sports as well, I'll definitely be able to serve you on both fronts. Feel free to drop me a line on any or either. Should be a good time all the way around. I got big announcements coming soon on the sports side, so we'll see what happens there. Demos.
Man, thank you so much for joining us. Your links are in the description below. We're getting a lot of thank yous from Daniel, Stephanie, Wolf.
And thank you to you guys, man. You definitely brought up some cool stuff for us to play on and talk about. Good responses. Even Steve Irwin tributes, which is always great. The only way it could have gotten better in the comments is if we mentioned Terry Crews or Sinbad. That's all I'm saying.
Thanks.
What?
But I will say that we will be doing this every Wednesday at 9:30 from this point out. We're definitely open to any kind of subjects. Shoot us your suggestions. I'm not entirely sure specifically how we're gonna continue as far as making the live stream public, or whether we're going to be cutting it down or so forth. But this will evolve from this starting point. We had a blast. It's really funny that I've done hundreds of live streams professionally as part of my job as a videographer. This is actually the first time I've ever live streamed myself.
Yes.
So, I mean, at one point I have the experience, at the other point I have absolutely no experience. So it's definitely been a lot of fun for us. Wolf says he loves the Who It Could Have Been series. We'll be getting a lot of good feedback for that. One thing I will ask is, please make sure that you subscribe to this channel. Please make sure you like it. And we want to build an audience here. We want to have more fan interactions, so please share it. I know that everybody says this stuff at the end of YouTube's, and I always feel weird saying it, but if you know, it's the only way we're gonna grow.
That's why you say, wait, this way, partner. We don't want to just do more stuff. We want to do more stuff with you, Wolf, Stephanie, all you guys, man. Like, if there's something that you've seen other places you want us to try, we'll do that too. If there's something new you want us to try, there's gonna be more at Who Could Have Been. We got plenty of suggestions for those. Some of those have been the best episodes. Bring it in, guys.
That is endless. That is going to be endless. And we definitely have quite a few. We filmed quite a few, and there's going to be a lot more interesting ones in the future. Obviously, there's a big range of that, because we can talk about actors that were considered. We can talk about actors that got very, very close. And even at some points, we're going to talk about actors that we feel should have been considered that maybe weren't. So there's quite a bit there for discussion. There are more required viewings on the way. Those take a lot longer to edit.
I got clamoring for Harlem Nights. Bad, Demos.
Harlem Nights is coming. Goldfinger is the very next one. That is almost done. So we're going to continue a look at the James Bond films.
Super fun too, definitely.
So. For who are going to include voice actors for animated movies too. We have covered a few. Steve Martin as the Genie, John Cleese as Cogsworth, Julie Andrews as Mrs. Potts. There's a lot more that we can do with that, and that's something we did start doing recently. We're going to do quite a bit more. Especially, I think the voice acting is especially interesting to cover, especially when the animated characters tend to take on a lot of the characteristics of the actors in general. There is one famous one involving Shrek, which we will be covering. Just by me naming that, you probably know who I'm talking about, but that's going to be coming up very soon as well.
Also, if you have suggestions for characters I should try to be the voice actor for. No, I'm kidding.
We're also open to more required viewing suggestions. Like I said, we already have quite a few lined up. We have Stargates coming out, more James Bond, the aforementioned Harlem Nights, more Hitchcock. We have quite a few that are ready, but we're looking forward to doing more. And eventually, when movies start coming out in theaters again, we're going to start covering a few new releases. Whenever that happens, God knows. I've been keeping my fingers crossed for No Time to Die for a while, so we'll see how that one turns out. Edward Scissorhands is coming out. Yes, Edward Scissorhands is coming out around Christmas. 100%.
You just went from talking about your fingers being crossed to going to Edward Scissorhands.
Because somebody mentioned Edward Scissorhands. Well, I'll have my scissors crossed. They're probably safer that way.
I would agree.
All right, guys. Have a good night. And remember, life is hilarious by default.